In 1982, Manny Pacquiao meets his elementary school teacher, and the reunion makes everyone cry. The woman who taught him when he was just a poor, hungry boy from General Santos City never imagined she would see him again, let alone as one of the most famous athletes in the world. You'll discover how they reconnected after decades, what emotional words were exchanged, and why this reunion touched the hearts of millions around the globe. Stay until the end because this story shows that true teachers never forget their students, and true students never forget those who believed in them when no one else did. General Santos City, South Cotabato, Mindanao, Philippines. A sunny Saturday morning in March 2023. The city, known as the tuna capital of the Philippines and the hometown of boxing legend Manny Pacquiao, was buzzing with its usual weekend energy. Markets were full of vendors, streets filled with jeepneys and motorcycles, and the air carried the familiar scent of grilled fish and fresh tropical fruits. Manny Pacquiao, now in his mid-40s, retired from professional boxing but still deeply involved in politics and business, had returned to his hometown for a charity event organized by his foundation. The event was scheduled for the afternoon at a local community center, where school supplies and food packages would be distributed to underprivileged families. But that morning, Manny had a different agenda. He wanted to visit his old elementary school, Saavedra Saway Elementary School, where he had studied briefly as a child before dropping out due to extreme poverty. The visit wasn't publicized, no media were informed, just a personal pilgrimage to a place that held significant memories from his difficult childhood. Accompanied only by his longtime assistant and a security guard, Manny arrived at the school around 9 a.m. The building had changed somewhat over the decades, renovated and expanded, but the core structure remained recognizable. The playground where he used to play during rare moments of joy, the flagpole where he stood for morning ceremonies, the classrooms where he struggled to focus on lessons while his stomach growled from hunger, all of it came flooding back. The school was open that Saturday for a special cleanup day, with teachers and some parent volunteers working to prepare for the upcoming school year. As Manny walked through the gate, a few people recognized him, their eyes widening in surprise. Word spread quickly, and within minutes a small crowd had gathered. "Senator Manny, welcome home," called out the current school principal, Mr. Antonio Reyes, rushing over to greet him. "Sir, what an honor. We had no idea you were coming." "Good morning, Principal Reyes. I'm sorry for the surprise visit. I just wanted to see the school again, to remember where I came from," Manny replied with his characteristic humility. "Of course, sir. Please, let me give you a tour. The school has changed so much, but I'm sure you'll still recognize some parts," the principal offered enthusiastically. As they walked through the corridors, Manny stopped frequently, touching walls, looking into classrooms, his mind clearly traveling back decades to his childhood. He shared brief stories with the principal about his time there, the embarrassment of not having proper school supplies, the shame of wearing the same torn clothes day after day, the fear of being called on in class because he hadn't eaten breakfast and couldn't concentrate. "This was my classroom," Manny said, stopping at a doorway. "Grade 3, I think. Or maybe grade 4. I only made it to grade 6 before I had to stop. My family needed me to work, to help earn money. Education was a luxury we couldn't afford." The principal nodded sympathetically. "Sir, many of our students today face the same struggles. Your story inspires them, shows them that circumstances don't have to define destiny." As they continued the tour, they entered the school's small library, recently added through donations. Inside, an elderly woman was organizing books on shelves, her back to the door. She wore a simple floral dress, her gray hair tied in a neat bun, her movements slow but purposeful. "Ah, Mrs. Alvarez," the principal called out. "We have a very special visitor today." The woman turned around, her face showing mild curiosity. She was perhaps in her early 70s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a gentle smile that seemed permanently etched on her face. As her gaze fell on Manny, her expression shifted from curiosity to confusion to sudden recognition. "Emmanuel," she whispered, using Manny's full first name. Her hand moved to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears almost instantly. Manny froze, staring at her. Recognition dawned on his face as well, and his own eyes began to water. "Teacher Luzviminda? Is that really you?" Emmanuel, my dear boy, Mrs. Luzviminda Alvarez rushed forward, and despite the decades between them, despite the vast gulf between the poor student she once knew and the world champion standing before her, she embraced him like a mother hugging her son. The principal and others in the library stepped back, sensing the profound nature of this moment. Some pulled out phones to record, while others simply watched with their own tears forming. "Teacher, I can't believe it's you," Manny said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've thought about you so many times over the years. I tried to find you but didn't know where to look. And I've followed your career, Emmanuel. Every fight, every victory, every time I saw you on television, I cried with pride. My little student who used to come to school with no slippers, who shared his friends' books because his family couldn't afford them, who fell asleep in class from hunger. Look at you now, Mrs. Alvarez said, pulling back to look at him properly, her hands still gripping his arms as if to confirm he was real. "Teacher, I need to thank you," Manny began, his voice breaking slightly. "You were the only teacher who didn't make me feel ashamed of being poor. Do you remember? When I came to class without supplies, you gave me paper and pencils from your own pocket. When other teachers scolded me for being dirty, you quietly pulled me aside and helped me wash my face and hands. When I fell asleep in class, you let me rest instead of punishing me, because you understood I was exhausted from working before school." Mrs. Alvarez nodded, tears streaming down her face freely now. "Of course I remember, Emmanuel. How could I forget? You were such a bright child, so eager to learn despite everything you were going through. It broke my heart that you couldn't continue your education. I even went to your house once to talk to your mother to see if there was any way to help you stay in school." "You did?" Manny asked, surprised. "I never knew that." "Your mother cried," Mrs. Alvarez continued. "She cried and told me that keeping you in school meant the family didn't eat. She showed me your younger siblings, explained that your father had left, that she was doing everything she could. What could I say? I understood. I went home that night and cried myself. I felt so helpless." The raw honesty of the memory hung in the air. Others in the library were openly weeping now, moved by the depth of emotion between former teacher and student. "Teacher, I never forgot you," Manny said. "When I started boxing, when I began to earn money, one of the first things I wanted to do was find you, to thank you, to help you if you needed help, but I didn't know how. I asked around in General Santos, but no one seemed to know where you were. After I retired from teaching in 2005, I moved to live with my daughter in Davao for several years," Mrs. Alvarez explained. "But I missed General Santos, missed this school. 2 years ago I moved back. The current principal, Mr. Reyes, he's actually my nephew. He knew I couldn't just sit at home doing nothing, so he asked me to volunteer here in the library. I organize books, help students with reading, tutor when needed. It keeps me active, keeps me connected to teaching." The principal nodded, confirming the story. "Yes, sir, Tita Luz is a treasure here. The students love her. She has so much wisdom, so much patience." Manny looked around the library, then back at Mrs. Alvarez. "Teacher, thank you for still serving, for still helping students even in retirement. That's true dedication. Teaching isn't just a job, Emmanuel. It's a calling. These children, they need us. Many of them are just like you were, poor, hungry, struggling. If I can make even a small difference in their lives like I tried to do with you, then my life has meaning," Mrs. Alvarez said simply. "You did more than make a small difference, teacher. You made me feel human when others made me feel like garbage. You made me believe I was worth something when the world told me I was worthless. That's not a small difference. That's everything," Manny replied, his voice passionate now. They moved to sit down at one of the library tables, and for the next hour they talked. Mrs. Alvarez shared stories about Manny as a young student, his love for sports even then, how he would organize boxing matches during recess using makeshift gloves made from socks and rags, how he was always protective of younger or weaker students, defending them from bullies despite being small himself. "You had a fighter's heart even as a child," Mrs. Alvarez recalled. "Not aggressive, but protective. You couldn't stand injustice, couldn't stand seeing others being hurt or taken advantage of. I remember thinking, this boy has special character." Manny shared his side of the memories too, how Mrs. Alvarez's classroom was his safe space, how her gentle encouragement made him feel capable even when he was failing. how her simple act of not embarrassing him in front of others preserved his dignity during the most humiliating period of his life. "Teacher, there was one day I remember so clearly," Manny said. "It was raining hard and I came to school soaking wet because I had no umbrella and no money for transportation. I walked several kilometers. My clothes were dripping, I was shivering, and I was so embarrassed. Other students were laughing at me. You took me aside, gave me your sweater to wear, and you hung my wet clothes near the window to dry. You didn't make a big deal about it, didn't draw more attention to me. You just quietly helped. I never forgot that." Mrs. Alvarez smiled through her tears. "I remember that day too. How could I not help? You were just a child trying so hard. All my students were precious to me. But you, Emmanuel, you were special because you never complained, never gave up, never lost your kindness despite your suffering." As word spread throughout the school and then through social media about Manny's presence and his reunion with his former teacher, more people began to arrive. Former classmates of Manny's, now in their 40s, came to the school. Other retired teachers who had taught at the school during that era arrived. The gathering became an impromptu reunion. One former classmate, now a tricycle driver named Roberto, shared his memory. "Manny, I remember you shared your lunch with me one time even though you barely had any food yourself. It was just a small piece of bread, but you broke it in half and gave me some. I never forgot that." Another, a woman named Teresa who worked as a market vendor, added, "You defended my younger brother from bullies once. You weren't even big or strong, but you stood up to them anyway. You got beaten up for it, but you didn't back down. That's courage." These stories, shared by humble people living ordinary lives, painted a picture of young Manny that went beyond his athletic prowess. They revealed his character, his kindness, his natural leadership even in poverty. Mrs. Alvarez listened to all these stories with visible pride. "You see, Emmanuel, you were already a champion before you ever stepped into a boxing ring. You were a champion of heart." As the morning turned to afternoon, Manny made a decision. He called his foundation staff and gave specific instructions. Within an hour, arrangements were being made. Manny announced to the gathered group that he was establishing a scholarship fund, specifically for students of Saavedra Saway Elementary School, prioritizing those from the poorest families, those who were at risk of dropping out like he had. "I can't change my past, but maybe I can change some children's futures," Manny said. "This school gave me what little education I got. Mrs. Alvarez gave me kindness when I needed it most. Now I want to give back." But he wasn't done. Turning to Mrs. Alvarez, he continued, "Teacher, I know you're volunteering here, but I want to do something for you. Please allow me to provide you with a monthly stipend, a form of pension that supplements whatever retirement benefits you receive. You gave so much to students like me, you deserve to be comfortable in your retirement years." Mrs. Alvarez began to protest, but Manny gently insisted. "Teacher, please. You taught me to be generous, to help others. Let me practice what you taught. Let me honor you the way you honored all your students through your dedication." Through tears, Mrs. Alvarez finally agreed. "Emmanuel, you don't have to do this, but I see your heart hasn't changed. You're still that kind boy who shared his bread. Thank you." The principal announced that the library would be renamed the Luz Viminda Alvarez Memorial Library, in honor of her decades of service. "Not memorial, I'm still alive," Mrs. Alvarez protested with a laugh through her tears. "Honorary library, then," the principal corrected, and everyone laughed. As the emotional day continued, someone suggested taking a photo recreation. They found an old class photo from 1982 that included young Manny and Mrs. Alvarez. The photo showed a serious-faced, skinny boy with worn clothes standing in a back row, and Mrs. Alvarez, much younger but still with that same kind smile, standing with her class. They recreated the pose. Manny standing, Mrs. Alvarez seated, the same relative positions. The contrast was striking. The malnourished boy was now a muscular world champion. The young teacher was now an elderly woman, but the connection between them was timeless. The photo went viral within hours of being posted online. Millions of people around the world saw it and were moved by the story. Comments poured in from across the globe. This is what true teaching looks like, planting seeds of hope that bloom decades later. Mrs. Alvarez never knew her kindness would help create a world champion, but she did it anyway. That's pure love. Manny never forgot the teacher who saw his humanity when he was invisible to others. Beautiful. International news outlets picked up the story. Major sports networks featured it. The reunion became a symbol of gratitude, of the lasting impact of teachers, of the importance of treating everyone with dignity regardless of their circumstances. In the following weeks, Mrs. Alvarez's life changed. She received messages from former students around the world, whom she'd taught over her 4-decade career. Many shared how she'd impacted their lives, how her kindness had stayed with them. She was invited to be a guest of honor at the National Teachers' Day celebration, where she received a Lifetime Achievement Award. But perhaps the most meaningful change was in her regular life. Manny kept his promise about the stipend, but he also did more. He arranged for regular health checkups for her, ensuring she had access to the best medical care. He invited her to his family gatherings, introducing her to his wife Jinky and his children, telling them, "This is Teacher Luz. She helped make me who I am today." Mrs. Alvarez, in turn, became an ambassador for education in General Santos. She gave talks at schools, encouraging teachers to see beyond the surface of their students, to recognize potential in even the most struggling children. She shared Manny's story not to boast, but to inspire. If you have a student who is poor, hungry, struggling, don't give up on them, she would tell teachers. Emmanuel was that student. I didn't know he would become world famous, and it didn't matter. I helped him because he deserved kindness, because all children deserve kindness. You might have the next Manny Pacquiao in your classroom, but even if you don't, every child deserves to be treated with dignity and compassion. The scholarship fund that Manny established grew substantially as others contributed. Within a year, over 50 students were benefiting from it, receiving school supplies, uniforms, daily meals, and tuition assistance. The dropout rate at the school decreased significantly. Academic performance improved, as students didn't have to worry as much about basic needs. Several years after the reunion, during a television interview about his legacy, Manny was asked what moment in his life made him most proud. The interviewer expected him to mention a major boxing title, perhaps his 8-division world championship record. Instead, Manny answered, "The day I found Teacher Luz again. The day I could thank her properly. The day I could help her the way she helped me. Championships are temporary, records are broken. But the impact of a kind teacher, the gratitude in a student's heart, that's forever." Mrs. Alvarez, watching the interview from home, cried again. In a later conversation with Manny, she said, "Emmanuel, you gave me something precious. You showed me that my work mattered, that those years of trying to help, of caring when I was tired, of spending my own money on students' supplies when I had little myself, all of it mattered. Every teacher wonders if they're making a difference. You showed me I did. That's the greatest gift." "Teacher," Manny replied, "you made more than a difference. You saved a life, my life. Without your kindness during those dark years, I don't know if I would have kept fighting. You gave me a reason to believe in humanity, in goodness. You taught me that poverty doesn't make you worthless, that circumstances don't define you. Those lessons were more valuable than any academic subject." The story of their reunion continued to inspire long after the initial viral moment. It became a case study in education schools about the importance of seeing students holistically, not just academically. It was cited in teacher training programs globally as an example of why compassion matters in education. For Manny, the reunion gave him closure on a painful part of his past. For years, he had carried guilt about leaving school, about failing at education. Mrs. Alvarez helped him reframe that narrative. "You didn't fail, Emmanuel. You survived. In circumstances where many would have been crushed, you found a way to live, and eventually to thrive. That's not failure. That's triumph." For Mrs. Alvarez, the reunion validated a lifetime of service. As she entered her late 70s, knowing that her work had contributed to shaping one of the Philippines' greatest heroes, gave her profound satisfaction. But even more meaningful was knowing that her simple acts of kindness had ripple effects she never imagined. Other stories emerged, too. Former students she'd taught decades ago came forward with their own memories of her kindness. A doctor in Manila recalled how she'd encouraged his interest in science when he was a poor student. A teacher in Davao remembered how Mrs. Alvarez had mentored her when she was a young, uncertain educator. A successful businessman in Cebu shared how she'd helped him learn to read when he was struggling. I had no idea, Mrs. Alvarez said when these stories were compiled. You teach because you care, not because you expect recognition. But hearing these stories, knowing that small acts of kindness created these ripples of positive change, it's overwhelming. The reunion also sparked a national conversation in the Philippines about teacher compensation and working conditions. Many pointed out that if Mrs. Alvarez, who had such profound impact on students, had to volunteer in retirement rather than being able to fully retire comfortably, something was wrong with the system. Manny, using his political platform, advocated for increased teacher salaries and better retirement benefits. Teachers like Mrs. Alvarez shouldn't have to worry about finances in their retirement. They've invested in the nation's future. The nation should invest in their security, he argued in Senate speeches. While systemic change is slow, the story did result in some concrete improvements: increased attention to teacher welfare, new scholarship programs for children of teachers, and more community support for retired educators. On the anniversary of their reunion, Manny organized a special celebration at the school. All of Mrs. Alvarez's living former students were invited. Hundreds came from across the Philippines and even abroad. They filled the school grounds, representing decades of her teaching career. Each shared a brief story of how she'd impacted their lives. The stories weren't all dramatic. Many were small moments of kindness, words of encouragement, extra help after class. But collectively, they painted a picture of a teacher who consistently, quietly, made a difference. Mrs. Alvarez, seated in a place of honor, listened to hours of testimonials. At the end, she was invited to speak. Rising slowly, supported by Manny, she addressed the crowd. My dear students, what you call kindness, I call duty. What you call generosity, I call basic human decency. I didn't do anything extraordinary. I simply treated you the way all children deserve to be treated. With respect, with patience, with belief in your potential. If every teacher did this, if every person did this, imagine what our world would be like. She paused, looking directly at Manny. Emmanuel, you honor me today, but I want everyone to know. You honored me the day you succeeded. Every time you fought in the ring, every time you helped someone, every time you showed humility despite your fame, you honored me. Because you carried forward the values we tried to teach you. Kindness, courage, compassion. That's the true legacy of education. The crowd erupted in applause. Many were crying openly. The scene was captured by media and once again shared globally, reminding people of the power of the teacher-student bond. In her final years, Mrs. Alvarez continued to volunteer at the school, now in the library that bore her name, until her health no longer allowed it. Manny ensured she had comfortable care, visiting her regularly, bringing his family, maintaining the connection. When Mrs. Alvarez passed away peacefully in 2028 at age 82, Manny was devastated. He delivered a eulogy that honored her not just as his teacher, but as a mother figure, a guardian angel, a hero. Teacher Luz taught me how to read and write, Manny said at her funeral, his voice breaking. But more importantly, she taught me how to be human. She taught me that kindness costs nothing but is worth everything. She taught me that circumstances don't define character. She taught me to see the best in others. Every good thing I've done, every person I've helped, every moment of compassion I've shown, it all traces back to her example. The funeral was attended by thousands, former students, fellow teachers, community members, and dignitaries. It was a celebration of a life well lived, of service given freely, of love shared generously. In her honor, Manny established the Luz Viminda Alvarez Foundation, dedicated to supporting teachers in impoverished areas, providing them with resources to help their neediest students. The foundation offered grants for teachers to buy supplies, to provide meals, to give clothing, all the things Mrs. Alvarez had done from her own meager salary throughout her career. Now teachers won't have to choose between helping students and feeding their own families, Manny explained at the foundation launch. They can do both. That's how we honor Teacher Luz's legacy. The story of Manny Pacquiao and Mrs. Alvarez continues to be told. It's featured in educational videos shown to aspiring teachers. It's shared in motivational talks about gratitude and perseverance. It's cited in discussions about the true purpose of education. For those who witnessed their 2023 reunion, the memory remains vivid. Two people, teacher and student, separated by decades and vastly different life circumstances, coming together in a moment of pure, mutual appreciation. The powerful image of a world champion boxer embracing his elderly elementary school teacher, both crying tears of joy and gratitude, transcended culture and language. It reminded the world that we never know how our actions might impact someone's life. Mrs. Alvarez didn't know that her kindness to a poor, hungry boy would help create a boxing legend. She just knew he was a child who needed help, so she helped. That's the lesson. Help because it's right, not because you'll get recognition. And it reminded students everywhere that gratitude matters. Manny, despite becoming one of the most famous athletes in the world, never forgot the teacher who showed him kindness. He sought her out. He honored her. He supported her. That's the kind of character that true success should create. So to you watching this now, what's your takeaway? If you're a teacher, remember that your smallest act of kindness might be the thing that keeps a struggling student going. You might not know the impact you're having, but it's real. Keep caring, keep trying, keep believing in your students. If you're a student or a former student, remember your teachers. The good ones who believed in you, who helped you, who shaped you. Reach out to them if you can. Thank them. Honor them. Let them know their work mattered. It will mean more to them than you realize. And for all of us, remember that kindness matters. Dignity matters. Seeing the humanity in others matters. Mrs. Alvarez didn't see a poor, dirty child who would probably amount to nothing. She saw Emmanuel, a human being deserving of respect and care. That vision changed everything. In a world that often judges by appearances, by wealth, by status, be like Mrs. Alvarez. See people. Really see them. Help them. Not for what they might become, but because they deserve kindness right now. That's the message of this reunion that made everyone cry. Not just the emotional moment itself, but what it represents. The enduring power of human connection. The lasting impact of compassion. The beautiful truth that we're all connected in ways we don't even realize. Thank you for watching this story. Share it if it touched you. Comment with your own stories about teachers who impacted your lives. Subscribe for more meaningful content that reminds us of the goodness in humanity. And most importantly, take action. Reach out to a teacher today. Thank someone who helped you. Be kind to someone who is struggling. Start your own ripple of compassion that might, decades from now, result in someone's tears of gratitude. God bless teachers everywhere. God bless students who remember and honor those who help them. And God bless people like Manny Pacquiao and Mrs. Luzviminda Alvarez, who show us what humanity is supposed to look like. Until next time, stay grateful, stay kind, stay connected to what truly matters. The best stories aren't about fame or fortune. They're about love, loyalty, and the bonds that transcend time and circumstance. This is one of those stories. Carry it with you, let it inspire you, and create your own version of it in your life. Farewell, and remember, we all have the power to be someone's Mrs. Alvarez. Use that power. Make someone's life better. You never know what impact you'll have.